Okay, welcome back, everybody. In this video, I am going to be reviewing the Strat-O-Matic tournament that I played for the 1980s American League Special Team set. Now, to give you a little background on this, a while back, Strat-O-Matic released 10-team American League set. And what I did was I created a little tournament to play with all these teams. And the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm first going to give you a list of the teams involved. So going year by year, 1980, there were no teams. 1981, we had the American League champion New York Yankees. From 1982, we have the American League champion Milwaukee Brewers. From 1983, we have the AL West champion Chicago White Sox and the world champion Baltimore Orioles. From 1984, we have the world champion Detroit Tigers. From 1985, we have the AL East champion Toronto Blue Jays and the world champion Kansas City Royals. 1986, we have the American League champion Boston Red Sox. From 1987, we have the World Series champion Minnesota Twins. No teams from 1988. And finally, from 1989, we have the world champion Oakland A's. So there are your 10 teams right there. So what I decided to do was how can I create a fair tournament where all the teams are in. However, I format it in a way where the higher performing teams have a leg up over some of the other teams. So, one of the first things that I did was I decided to sit down and actually rank the teams. And I needed to come up with some kind of a point system. And this is where I would love everyone's feedback on how I rank the teams. So what I decided to do was basically three simple categories and assign points to them. So if you were a World Series champion, you get 10 points. So for example, the 84 Tigers, 89 A's, 83 Orioles, 85 Royals, and 87 Twins already have a leg up over the non World Series winners who were in this set. Then what I did was I assigned 6 points if you were a ALCS champion. So a team like the 84 Tigers get 10 points for winning the World Series and an additional 6 for going to the World Series. Teams like the 86 Red Sox, 81 Yankees, and 82 Brewers have 6 points. And then what I would do in my third category is I would say, okay, you get 3 points if you win 100 games or more. And then what I would do after that as a final tiebreaker is I would just do overall wins, just so we didn't have like a tie in a certain spot. So, based on these rankings, being that this was the only American League team to win the World Series and win 100 games, my number one ranked team is the Detroit Tigers. And I'm just going to go through the rankings here real quick. Number two, I got the 1989 A's. Number three, I've got the 1983 Orioles. Number four, I've got the 85 Royals. Number five, I've got the 1987 Minnesota Twins. So that does it for my World Series champions. And you could see the reason why Kansas City is ranked higher than Minnesota is because Kansas City won more games in the regular season. So that's why they get a little bit of a higher rating. Um, Coming in at number six, I have the 1986 Red Sox. At number seven, I've got the 1982 Brewers. At number eight, I've got the 1981 New York Yankees. So team six, seven, and eight, the Red Sox, Brewers, and Yankees. Those are my three American League pennant winners. However, did not win the World Series. And they're ranked. What I did with the 81 Yankees was I had to basically go by winning percentage because that was obviously the strike year. But even that way, they didn't come close to the Brewers' output in 1982. So in this little block here of these three teams, ranked from best to worst, it goes Boston 6, Milwaukee 7, Yankees 8. And coming in at number 9, I've got the 1983 White Sox. And coming in at number 10, I have the 1985 Toronto Blue Jays. So my next step was to figure out, okay, how do I create a tournament here? Something that makes sense, it's fair, and even more importantly, I wanted to make it super hard and super difficult and very competitive, especially for my lower seed. So what I decided to do was I decided to break it up into basically two separate brackets where I would have, let's see, one, two, three, four. I would have four playing games for the lower ranked teams. If I go by the rankings and I look at the bottom four teams, you've got number 10 Toronto, number 9 Chicago White Sox, number 8 New York Yankees, number 7 Milwaukee Brewers. What I decided to do was those four teams would each play a one-game playoff to be played at the stadium of the higher seed. So you have the 85 Blue Jays at the 82 Brewers in a one-game playoff. And in my other bracket, we've got the 1983 White Sox at the 1981 Yankees. So what happens after that? The winner of those games would go on to the second playing round, which again is another one game playoff. So the winner of Toronto Milwaukee will go to the number 5 ranked 87 Minnesota Twins. The winner of White Sox Yankees go to the number 6 ranked 1986 Red Sox. And again, that also is a one game playoff. Now, the other thing that I decided to do, and you're going to see on my sheet up top here, when you see the arrow at the very top of the page here, you see how I got a 1 in parentheses. That basically means it's a one game playoff. What the arrow means in between, no day off. The Blue Jays and Brewers winner will have to play the next day in Minnesota. Now, why did I set it up that way? I set it up that way so that I would not run into a scenario where you would have a team, whatever team, ride like one really great starting pitcher or even two very good starting pitchers all throughout this tournament. I decided to make it as difficult as I could on the lower ranked teams. So after we get past this second round of one game playoffs, we then move on to a best of three, where you see at the top bracket here, you have the number 4 ranked 85 Kansas City Royals waiting for whoever comes out of this little tournament here between Toronto, Milwaukee, and Minnesota. And on the other end of my bracket, I've got the number 3 ranked 1983 Baltimore Orioles, who are sitting there waiting for the winner of White Sox, Yankees, Red Sox. Now, this round here, where the Royals and Orioles are waiting to play, this is a best of 3 with all 3 games played at the higher seeds stadium. So basically, in this round, the 85 Royals will play all 3 games at home. The 83 Orioles will play all 3 games at home. As well as there is no day off for the wild card team. So again, I go back to 85 Blue Jays, 82 Brewers. They play on, let's say, a Monday. Then they got to play the next day, Tuesday, at Minnesota. And then the winner of that, the next day, on a Wednesday, starts a best of 3. So what this idea that I had was because this will really test a team's depth. Much like when you go through a regular season. I've done a couple of videos on Yankee seasons that I played. You know, as you're going through the season, you do have to manage pitchers' point of weaknesses and things like that. This will play into my tournament, and I felt like this was the best way to keep it as fair and, well, I'm a little afraid to say realistic because unfortunately, and it's not just baseball, it's pretty much all sports. I think a lot of sports don't make things hard enough on lower seeds in tournaments like this. I think the way I have my tournament set up, it makes it pretty hard for a lower seed to advance. Getting back to my bracket here, and most of my video here will be spent on, you know, the idea behind the tournament rather than going game by game and talking about all the results like I've done other videos on where I play like a best of seven, fantasy series between two teams and I spend like 3 to 5 minutes talking about each game. No, this video is more based on the actual tournament that I played and how I set it up and to get everyone's feedback as to what you think about the tournament that I set up. When we get past the best of three, which let me call that the first round of my tournament, because, like I said, when the Blue Jays play the Brewers, the White Sox play the Yankees, let's face it, that's a play in game. Then when the 87 Twins play and the 86 Red Sox play in the other bracket, that's another playing game. So to me, the real tournament starts with the actual series. So the first round is a best of three with all three games at the higher seeds ballpark. Then if you look at my sheet, I have a DO up here, which basically means day off for whoever wins the best of three series. So if you have a team win the first two games, then that's a big advantage to them because now they get 2 days off before going into the best of five semifinal round. Okay. So the semifinal round is a best of five, and sitting there waiting to find out who their opponents are, I've got the number one ranked 1984 Detroit Tigers, and I've got the number two ranked 1989 Oakland A's. Now back to my sheet up here where I have the 2 comma 2 comma 1. That just basically is a reminder to me, okay, it's 2 games at higher seed, 2 games at lower seed. Game 5 is back at the higher seed stadium, and I got the little X there. That basically means there's a day off between games 2 and 3. Games 3, 4, and 5 are played in consecutive days. And then I pretty much follow that same pattern as I go into my American League Championship Series. Again, best of five, day off leading into the series. And once again, it is 2 games at higher seed, 2 games at lower seed, and game 5, if necessary, is back at the higher seeds stadium. So that is how I set up the 1980s American League Strat tournament. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to quickly go through how this tournament went down. And I will be sharing the actual play by play. However, I'm not going to be going into great detail with them, but I'm just going to go through the results. So feel free to, pause the video and check out the play by play. But in my first playing game, I've got the 1981 New York Yankees defeating the 1983 Chicago White Sox. So the New York Yankees move on to play the 86 Red Sox. In my other playing game, I've got the 1985 Blue Jays beating the 1982 Brewers 3-2. So the 83 White Sox and 82 Brewers are out. And on my bracket here, I'm going to move on with the New York Yankees and Toronto Blue Jays. So the New York Yankees will now go on to face the 86 Red Sox, and the 85 Blue Jays will visit the 1987 Twins. 1981 Yankees at 1986 Red Sox. 81 Yankees win that game 5-0 behind Dave Righetti. So the New York Yankees move on to the best of three. They will face the 1983 Baltimore Orioles. And in my last playing game, I've got the 1987 Twins defeating the 1985 Blue Jays 7-4. So the Minnesota Twins are moving on. 85 Blue Jays are out after winning the first playing game. Also out of the tournament are the 1986 Red Sox. So let's move on to best of three series. Let me get started with Yankees and Orioles. And just real quick, just to explain one thing here. You're going to see in game number one of this best of three series, all three games in Baltimore, 81 Yankees at 83 Orioles. What I decided to do with the 81 Yankees was I went with Rick Russell in the first game because looking at a best of three, I kind of said to myself, okay, well, I think the most important game in a best of three is actually the middle game because obviously it's a closeout game for somebody. So if I could get past this game, I'll feel pretty good about my chances having Tommy John going game number two because in the Yankees' first playing game, Ron Guidry pitched. The second playing game, excuse me. Yeah, that's right. Ron Guidry pitched the first playing game. Dave Righetti pitched the second game at Fenway Park. So the Yankees win the first game. However, the Orioles win games two and three. Game two, they win 3-2, and they win game number three, 3-1. So the 1983 Orioles move on. In my other best of three series. This is the 1987 Twins at the 1985 Kansas City Royals. You're going to see the Kansas City Royals were able to get through this in two games. They win game number one, 6-4, and they win the second game 5-2. So the Royals go into the next round, which is the semifinal round, in pretty good shape because they get 2 days off going into the next round. Now we get started with the semifinals. In my first semifinal, we've got the 1985 Royals taking on the 1984 Tigers. And this was a series, I remember playing this series and really being very surprised by it. No disrespect to the 85 Royals, they're an excellent team, but I was shocked that they swept the 1984 Tigers. You see, they won game number one, 8-2. They won the second game, 7-2, and then they won the last game in Kansas City in walk-off fashion, 7-6. So the 1985 Royals sweep the 1984 Tigers, and they are moving on to the American League Championship Series. And they're also sitting in pretty good shape because they get a few days off because they swept the best of five series. Now, in my other semifinal series, we've got the 1983 Orioles taking on the 1989 Oakland A's. And you're going to see the Oakland A's are able to take this series in four games. They win the first game 3-0. Baltimore takes the second game 9-5. Third game 3-0 shutout. Last game or the fourth game, Oakland wins 5-4. So my American League final in my 1980s Strat-O-Matic tournament will be the 1985 Kansas City Royals, who went into the tournament as the number 4 seed, and they are playing the number 2 seed Oakland A's. So I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, okay, well, the seedings kind of worked out because none of my, whether you want to call them wild cards or play-in teams, none of my play-in teams got any farther than the first round, which was a best of three. No one got any farther than the 81 Yankees. They got to a third game, but they got eliminated. The 87 Twins were eliminated 2-0 in that round. The only surprise up until now was the 85 Royals beating the 84 Tigers the way that they did. I mean, if you would have told me before the series the 85 Royals would win a close 5-game series, I'd be like, okay, well, anything can happen. But I never thought they would have swept. Now, in my American League Championship Series, we are going to have the American League champion be the 1989 Oakland A's. They take game number one 4-2. They take the second game 1-0, and they take the third game in Kansas City 5-3. So my American League champion in my 1980s Strat-O-Matic tournament are the 1989 Oakland A's. Now, my thoughts on this tournament and the Oakland A's winning the tournament. I did a video a while back on the 1984 Tigers. I believe I had them set up to play. Who did I play them against? Oh, yeah, the 1976 Reds. And the 1984 Tigers are a very, very good Strat-O-Matic team. They're a really good Strat-O-Matic team. However, I would say this: if you were to just rank the teams just by pure Strat-O-Matic cards, in my opinion, it's not even close. The 1989 A's in Strat-O-Matic are just a really, really good team. I mean, they are just, there's just no holes on this 1989 Oakland A's team. First of all, very good lineup. Obviously, they got Ricky Henderson at the top of the lineup, a lot of speed, a lot of power with Jose Canseco and Mark McGuire. You got Dave Parker at DH. So they could definitely hit. The defense is solid. The starting pitching is good, not great. It's good starting pitching. What really separates the 1989 Oakland A's is their bullpen. I mean, their bullpen is just completely lights out. And I'm going to just going to show you the bullpen here, and it's a really good bullpen with a lot of interchangeable parts. So obviously you've got the closer, Dennis Eckersley. Everyone remembers him, but it's the other arms in the bullpen which makes them really good. Gene Nelson has a good card. Jim Corsi has a good card. Matt Young and Rick Honeycutt are really solid left-handed arms out of the bullpen who are just lights out against left-handed hitting. So just all around, this 1989 Oakland A's team is really one of the better Strat-O-Matic teams that I've ever come across. And maybe one day I'll sit down and do a video. Again, like I've said in other videos, I do not have every team from every year, but I do have a number of sets and a number of cards. And the 1989 A's are one of those teams who, when you look at them, your eye pops out when you look at the entire team. It's not like when you, let's say, you open up a Chicago White Sox team from the mid 90s and you see a Frank Thomas card. There are no cards like that on the 1989 A's. They just have a really balanced lineup with no automatic outs. The starting rotation is good to very good. Not great, but very good. It's not like a starting rotation like the 1996 Braves. It's a very good starting rotation. So there it is. My American League champion for my 1980s Strat-O-Matic tournament are the 1989 Oakland A's, and they will advance to play the winner of my 1980s National League tournament. Now, my National League tournament video will be a shorter separate video since I don't have to go through all the details behind like how I set up the tournament the way that I did. And then my next video after that will be Oakland A's versus the winner of the National League 1980s tournament. So thank you again, everyone, for watching, and please leave a comment as to how you guys think I set up the tournament and how I did all the rankings and what you think about the results. Does anyone out there really believe that the 1989 A's really were the best American League team of the decade? I think you could definitely make a argument about it. Even though I was always kind of partial to the '84 Tigers myself, the 1989 A's were very, very solid. Terrific team, balance all throughout the team. And even in my tournament here, let's see, 3 games to 1. Yeah, in my American League tournament, the Oakland A's won 6 out of 7 games. So how about that? So there it is. 1989 A's win my 1980s American League Strat-O-Matic tournament.